Live now from Fox, I'm Andrew Kraft. Let's give you a lay of the land. Where are we going throughout the rest of the evening here? There's so many top headlines to get to. Of course, we have our eye, though, on Hawaii, as so many Hawaiians now under this tsunami warning there. So we're not going away from that story. It's going to be one of our key stories throughout the course of the evening. Though in the next hour, we want to get to some of these international headlines on the war in Ukraine, on the war between Israel and Hamas, and that ceasefire that was reached over the weekend between Cambodia and Thailand. So we got a lot on that front on the international stage, but also while we continue to follow the after effects of this 8.8 magnitude earthquake there off the coast of Russia. What we want to do right now, I know this is a story a lot of you have been following throughout the course of the last, month or so. And this, of course, is the Epstein saga. We're hearing more about Ghislaine Maxwell, what her attorney is telling members of Congress. Take a look at this. Her attorney in this letter to James Comer, remember he's the Republican chairman of the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee, saying, here is our response. Maxwell pressing ahead with an appeal to the Supreme Court on Monday, seeking to overturn her conviction on the grounds she was unlawfully prosecuted for sex trafficking minors with Jeffrey Epstein. Today, she appealed to Congress to push for a pardon so she can, quote unquote, testify openly and honestly about the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, according to that letter from her attorney. Fox's Tom Gran with more.
As the Epstein files drama continues to swirl around the administration, President Trump offering a fresh account Tuesday of why he ended his relationship with the late accused sex trafficker.
We took people that worked for me, and I told him don't do it anymore, and he did it, and I said stay the hell out of here.
Among the workers allegedly taken, according to Mr. Trump, was one of Epstein's accusers, Virginia Giuffre, who died by suicide earlier this year.
He stole her. And by the way, she had no complaints about us, as you know, none whatsoever.
Meanwhile, the Justice Department is seeking a deposition from Epstein's associate, Ghislaine Maxwell. Tuesday, her attorney sent a letter to the House Oversight Committee saying she'll testify to Congress if she's pardoned. Democrats are skeptical she's worth hearing from at all.
Ghislaine Maxwell is a documented liar. A lot of the charges on her are perjury. I don't expect, I'm still going to question her if I have the chance, but I don't expect her to be truthful in those answers.
The FBI says Epstein took his own life in 2019 while awaiting trial. Earlier this month, the Justice Department released video from outside Epstein's cell the night he died. But it raised more questions than answered when it was discovered that a minute of the footage was missing. Tuesday, CBS News reported the DOJ has a copy of the footage without that missing minute. The White House has been looking for a way to resolve the controversy as it threatens to overshadow the administration's other priorities. Tom Graham, Fox News.
Tom, thanks so much. So there's a lot to get to. Let's do that with legal analyst John Day. He joins me. John, thanks for being with us, and thanks for bearing with us as we scramble with all this breaking news today. But this is important. We wanted to get this segment in here. Let's start from yesterday. That was the news, that she is pressing ahead with an appeal to the Supreme Court, seeking to overturn her conviction on the grounds she was unlawfully prosecuted for sex trafficking minors there with Epstein. So Maxwell is trying to take this all the way up until the Supreme Court. Is she bypassing the lower courts here? Why the expedited fashion? What is her stance going to be? I mean, are they going to give her a hearing on this expedited basis there at the high court, John?
Well, and thanks for having me, Andrew. It remains to be seen what the Supreme Court's going to do. Meanwhile, she's working every angle, of course, that she can. She's asking Congress, she's saying, look, I will come and testify. I'll tell you what I know. Just give me immunity, push for clemency or a pardon. Give me a list of the questions you want to ask me in advance. And let's do the interview outside the prison where I'm currently residing. So she's asking for the moon. I mean, why not? If her lawyers think they can get something. But the real question remains, if this information was out there prior to and during her trial, why wasn't that card played before? That's the question that really hasn't been answered yet.
But the appeal question, I mean, it has its normal process that her attorneys can work itself out through. So is she just bypassing that outright?
Right. She's going straight to the Supreme Court. Doesn't mean the Supreme Court has to do anything on it, but
okay.
she's trying to do an end run, and the court can say no, get back in line. But what she's trying to do is create the idea that there's this immediacy, that there's information that she has that is so important that it really needs to get before the court at the same time she's trying to get it before Congress. I mean, she really is working every angle she can. And is the Supreme Court likely to bite? I mean, we don't know, but that's certainly Maxwell's lawyers are hoping that appeal works its way up to the court as quickly as possible.
So let's focus now, though, on Capitol Hill. A lot is happening there on the Maxwell question. So I want to read from the New York Times yesterday. They reported Senator Dick Durbin of Illinois, the Democrat there on the Senate Judiciary Committee, demanded all recordings and transcripts of this. Remember, the interviews you and I were discussing, Todd Blanche conducted with Maxwell July 24th and 25th. In a letter to Blanche, who conducted the interviews, Durbin also demanded that the DOJ commit to offering no pardon or commutation of her sentence in exchange for information, citing, quote unquote, serious questions about the potential for a corrupt bargain between the Trump administration and Ghislaine Maxwell. Now, John, I think a lot of people would want to see the transcripts of those interviews, of those conversations Blanche had with Maxwell. Will we see them? Can Congress compel them?
Right. Well, that's the issue. Can Congress compel the executive branch to turn over these the transcripts of the recordings? Remember, Blanche was in there for, what, 9 hours or so. That's a long time. It's a long time for the number 2 person in the Department of Justice to be the actual line prosecutor who's meeting with this potential witness. So that in itself is such a curious development that it was Blanche himself who went in for those 9 hours. But whether Congress can get those transcripts, that's going to be a battle, of course. And, the idea that so many members of Congress are pushing for full transparency. But again, at the end of the day, you've got Maxwell saying, these are my conditions. Are you going to meet them? And of course, the response from Congress has been, you don't get to set the ground rules. We do.
Yeah, focusing still on Capitol Hill, let's go to the House side. I showed our viewers this letter in response to Representative James Comer's requests for her to testify in front of his committee via subpoena. So she was subpoenaed, but her lawyer responded, David Oscar Marcus, essentially saying she will invoke her Fifth Amendment rights during a forthcoming congressional deposition unless, John, she is granted immunity. So her attorney there, Marcus, adds if Maxwell receives clemency from the president, she would be willing to testify openly in public. So a lot is on the table, John. First, that her attorney says she will invoke her Fifth Amendment rights there potentially in a closed-door setting unless she is granted some type of immunity. She had, it was reported, limited immunity during those interviews with Todd Blanche. And then her attorney, Marcus, takes it so far to say that she will even receive clemency from the president. She wants that in return for testifying openly in public. They are putting a lot on the table, aren't they, John?
Well, they are putting a lot on the table. And remember, what underlies this whole thing is that Maxwell has claimed throughout this that she was covered by the deal that Epstein struck in Florida with prosecutors, that none of his associates would be prosecuted, basically. So she's hoping to go way back in time and benefit from that. But the congressional involvement means that she now gets to make all these demands through her lawyers. If you want my testimony, if it's this important to you, you've got to do these certain things. I mean, she obviously wants clemency or a pardon. She doesn't want to be spending the next 17 years of her life in a federal prison. So she's trying to do everything she can to get out of that. But again, anything that happens subsequent to the meeting with Blanche, anything that happens now is always going to be colored by the idea that there was some kind of a deal made. There was some kind of a deal in the works. And for the most part, we're seeing this negotiation play out publicly, which is pretty unusual. You never usually see that when federal prosecutors are making deals with criminal defendants. So there's a level of transparency, whether people like it or not, that's kind of remarkable.
I'm struck by how transparent and forthcoming her attorney has been all throughout this process. Are you? Or is that just him being a good defense attorney?
They've got nothing to lose. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? She stays in prison. They've got to get something. I mean, again, if there is such a valuable card that she's been holding, close to her vest why wasn't that card laid down before this? So that's a question, certainly. But Marcus, her attorney, has really got to do everything he can to get some kind of benefit for her. And so they've got to certainly build up the hype around the information that she has. But at the end of the day, and then the final analysis, someone's going to know what that information is if she gets to Congress, if she gets to, if the transcripts are released. So somebody knows what she knows. Todd Blanche knows what she knows. And the question is Congress going to get the same information?
But in Congress, who would grant her immunity? The chairman of the committee? Is that how that would work?
And my understanding is it would have to come through the chairman of the committee, but also, the immunity is pretty limited. This is not like immunity from federal prosecution. It's certainly limited immunity to come before Congress, make her statements, give them the information she has, and there's some equivalence to, say, federal prosecutors granting immunity to witnesses. This is congressional testimony, and we don't even know if it's even likely that she'll get there because of these conditions that they've laid out. And what she has said was, if you don't meet the conditions, then go ahead and subpoena me, but I'll invoke my Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. And then you'll never hear what I know. And you'll have to go back to trying to get transcripts from those 9 hours of Todd Blanche's meeting with her.
So the limited immunity question, that's just for her, right? That's not for anyone she may have brought up or implicated in some of these conversations. Remember, it was reported that, almost 100 individual figures were brought up over the course of those 9 hours of interviews. Are we ever going to hear about them? Maybe if Dick Durbin and Sheldon Whitehouse are successful in compelling the release of some of those transcripts, but if not, then what?
Right. Very good question. What is the status of the names, the people whose names were given during the 9 hours of questioning, of discussions, and what becomes that? And again, this is all in the context of this public clamor for transparency on the Epstein case, clamor for transparency on what information is being handed out. So at the end of the day, it may be that Maxwell's lawyer playing these cards like this has been a very, very smart move. If you can get some kind of advantage for her and some of that information is given to Congress and then released publicly. I mean, this is Maxwell's one last chance, unless her appeal is successful with the Supreme Court. But this is her chance to try to get her sentence reduced or even eliminated through clemency or a pardon.
All right, John Day, thanks so much for kind of breaking down some of those legal questions. This story's on two tracks, the legal and the political. We won't get into the political with you, but the president was asked on Air Force One on his way back to Washington today numerous questions about, his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, how well he knew him way back when. And he was also, quite forthcoming about that. And we were playing some of that audio here. So he also keeps bringing it up. Well, he keeps getting asked about it, essentially moving this story further along. And so it is not redounding to his benefit in that respect. Would you make that argument?
Yeah, I mean, these are the questions that are the forefront of people's minds right now. And he's right. He does have the ability to issue pardons. But again, the context of this, I mean, any information that comes out, if there is a pardon issued, if there's some type of clemency granted to Maxwell, the question's always going to be, what was the deal? Was there a deal? What was the information that was supposed to either be withheld or released? So the questions that would swirl around a pardon or a clemency grant are ones that would really never die. But the president's right when he says, I have the right to do it. He certainly does have the right to do it. The question is always going to be, is he going to do it? And was there any kind of a deal made prior to that?
All right, John Day, as always, thanks so much for your time. We'll talk soon.